Hello, intuitive art friends. It's Rachel Archelaus here, and I'm with Carrie Roldan. And we're just going to have a chat, so we figured we'd invite you along. Last week on our live stream, we talked about your story and rewriting that for yourself, or even just getting current with yourself. And that has really impacted Carrie and I this week. We run into a lot of things because we just keep continuing to upgrade and to become more current with who we really are and where we are vibrationally. And it's caused a little bit of turmoil for us, but it's also illuminated just like an extra level for me, at least, of love and appreciation for my life and for what's happening, and realizing that even the craziest little things that I've asked for are here. And every recognition of that just blows my mind. But with those really high highs, I've had some kind of crazy lows. So we're going to talk about both and just share what's happened for us this past week.
Yeah. So same. It's so interesting how and when that works. So it Rachel and I spend a lot of time talking about, right, living in your highest vibration, living in your best feeling. And we in our own personal lives have lived more and more and more and more into that feeling, right? That's why our lives keep getting better and better and better and better. And there is this little thing called contrast that shows up. And the thing about it, at least how I experience it, is it shows up now that I have a new baseline vibration, right? So Rachel always uses her hands to demonstrate. Like, I used to live down here and now I live up here. But occasionally something will happen where I will dip back down. Maybe not all the way back down, but I'll dip down a little bit. Something will show up that causes me to dip down a little bit. And the feeling is so much more uncomfortable because I usually live up here now. So when I used to live down here, if I was here, I wouldn't really maybe have noticed, or I would have felt fine. It would have been acceptable. Well, now when something like that happens, it can really throw me off because I'll be like, what's happening? What's going on? And that is what happened for me this week. So, and I know something similar happened for you, Rachel. So the story that happened for me is I was all good, like living up here, like I always do. And I'm sure that there was a little. I know for me, there's still a little story that I would love to let go of. But there's a little story around like, ooh, things have been so good for so long, right? Maybe too good for for too long. And so something will come up and it will trigger me in a new way, and we're going to talk about how we get through that. But for now, I'll tell you what came up for me was like this crazy situation with a client. And I don't know if anything else came up, because sometimes what will happen is when a situation comes up, then it will like snowball, and I'll look around and be that's what happened for Rachel, it sounds like. For me, I think in my personal life, it was just the one thing. The snowball was that I knew that something had come up for Rachel and something was coming up for somebody else. So I saw the snowball around me, and we can quickly create stories around that as well, right? Like, and what I used to do in the story was like, things are good, things are good, things are good, and then something would happen and be like, oh, it was all a lie, just kidding, right? But now, because I live here most of the time, when things came down here, I was able to look at it and be like, this is not my story. What's happening here? Let me take a breath. But regardless, what happened was a crazy situation where I had a client who did something in their business, and I saw it and was like, oh no, that's not okay. That wasn't what I was talking about. And this action that they took could be really detrimental to them, to their bit. Like it felt really out of integrity. And that's not who she is at all. She's a lovely woman. And so I sent her an email saying, hey, I saw that email, just a heads up. Like, and of course, like hindsight, right? Do you ever send an email when it's that, right? It's always better to at least send a voice memo so they can hear your inflection. And she was so angry and offended by my email. Like, I wrote this email as a kind of protective, like, hey, I saw what you sent. I didn't say quite these words, but in my mind, I was like, you need to take that down right away, and maybe even write like an email kind of rescinding or clarifying what you said. Um, but I sent her an email just saying, I'm hopeful it was an oversight on your part, whatever. And just a heads up. And she sent something back to me saying, I don't appreciate your snippiness. And you're like, she was all like angry at me and frustrated and kind of like, am I even getting what I'm paying for? And I was like, what? Like, that doesn't happen to me in my life and business anymore. Um, yeah, okay. I'm gonna stop there because we could go to the good part of the story in a second. But Rachel, do you want to share something, your the similar sort of blip on your radar as well?
Yeah, well, it just a couple things happen, and I actually have a joke with my boyfriend where, like, usually I'm flying high, going fast, nothing in my way. I'm like the luckiest person. I attract all this great stuff, and that's my norm. But then when something goes wrong and I lose my focus, man, does it just go downhill fast. So it's like one thing after another. I had an issue with a client that just I've never had to deal with before. It was a very difficult thing. Um, and then this is kind of a funny thing, but I was sitting on the floor with my cat and she like projectile vomited like within inches of me, which I mean, luckily didn't hit me, but that's just part of the things that occur. It's like everything, something else happened in my business, and I was like, what is going on? Um, and so it was just like a lot of some big things, some little things, but for a good solid 5 days, it was just like one thing after another. And I was doing my best to refocus, but sometimes it's just hard. Sometimes you just have to feel where you are, and that's not in a good place. So I don't want to be too specific, but yeah, you get the idea.
Well, it's funny because in deciding to talk about this, right? Part of it is like, once we work our way out of it by retelling the story, like, we can get sucked back in, right? So so we're doing our best to be as specific as we can while not sucking ourselves back into. We don't want to go back down here. Um, but yeah, I mean, similar stuff, right? And what made the difference for me, Rachel, was remembering my truth, remembering that I don't live here anymore. And oh, I've dipped. Like, clearly there's a disturbance in the force, right? And it actually brought me a little bit of comfort to know that you, who is also super high vibe, had like dipped as well. And like, okay, how do we deal with it? How do we do this? When we dip, what do we do? And it really helped me to just know, okay, this is not where I live. This is not who I am. Remembering the truth about myself, remembering the truth about that client, right? She's an incredible woman. Like, it was the stuff that she was saying to me was like, that is not who you are, right? That's not who we are. Taking some deep breaths. And as hard as it was to not respond or justify or get angry or whatever, just put it on a shelf, right? That's what I had to do, is like, I know this will resolve. I know this will work out for the highest and best of everyone. And I know that trying to solve this from where I am now is not going to benefit me or her or anybody else. In this case, there was another person involved. Like, so I am just going to trust that this is working out and that my job is to feel better, that my job is to take care of me, that my job is to turn my focus to what lights me up. And lo and behold, I did that. So I don't know that that's what most people consider best practices. Like, just ignore the fire, right? There is a fire. Ignore it. Just Just trust that it will put itself out. But that's what I did, right? I had to tend to my own energy first. And eventually I was able to get to the place where I was able to send her a loving response. But then still, I had to let it go, right? I had to acknowledge her and send her a loving response and then do nothing. And then do nothing. And then do nothing some more. And no, it's all working out. Everything is happening perfectly. This is it, like it's all working out. And the truth is, I meet with her on Thursday, but her responses, we communicate over Voxer, and her responses to what I said over Voxer have now suddenly, like, the energy has shifted. My energy around her responses have shifted. I don't know where her energy is, but I know enough to know that if my energy around it is better, so too will hers be. And yeah, I like feel super good about it and know that it is resolving for the highest and best of everyone involved. I do not anticipate this person like saying, forget you, you're not my coach anymore. But if she does, I will be like so at peace with that and so feeling good about it. And like it will be perfect and wonderful. And point being, right? I was here. I dipped a situation caused me to dip. My own perception caused me to dip. A little bit of fear and protectiveness and stuff that, like, all of that caused me to dip. What I had to do was relax, know what is mine to control, right? How I feel, what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and release everything else. And so now, as we go into the rest of the week, I feel so amazing about this. I have a feeling this client, like, actually learned something massive, something I thought I had taught her. Like, I thought we had covered this multiple times, and probably it took experiencing this for her to, like, oh, that's what Carrie means, or oh, that's. Anyways, all that to be said, I'm anticipating a lovely outcome, and because I'm anticipating a lovely outcome, I know I will get.
Oh, look at my dots. You guys, it never
Mhm.
fails. Winter in Utah is dots. Yeah, we've talked about this in a live stream, like the side effects of raising your vibration. Well, sometimes this comes with it, where raising ourselves up and exposing the limiting beliefs, the baggage that we were carrying around before. And then sometimes something will happen in our lives and we'll lose our focus on the good stuff. We'll get focused on the negative event or whatever is happening. And you're just so right about us having to get ourselves back in order before any response goes out into the world, because we get what we give, we get where we're vibrating. So the number one priority is always to help ourselves feel better, get back to that place we were at before, and or even a better place if possible. And then the right thing to say, it'll come across better. All things will be better if we can get back to that higher place, because that's, people feel our energy. And if we just respond in that place of like anger or frustration or worry or protectiveness or defensiveness, it's not going to get anywhere. We got to get back up here in order to make any kind of headway. And sometimes we just, we're going to go through stuff. So this is all good stuff to know. Yeah, I'm very grateful when these things happen, because it allows me to then make my life better going forward. Like, realizing what maybe helped to cause that in the first place. What was I thinking before? What wasn't I doing before that I can now do to help that from happening again? And I've learned a lot this past week in that regard. So I'm always happy. It's like after I get sick, then I feel even better because I'm not sick anymore. So it's like there's always a positive to this. both parties learned. In Carrie's case, we'll see with mine. It doesn't matter. I'm just focused on me, and and this is the kind of stuff that makes you stronger and more confident, because if you can handle the little things that come up, then when the big thing comes up, you can handle that. And then all of a sudden, you're just not so worried about, growing anymore. You're not worried about the unknown, which is so tremendously helpful for living a life like this when we want to keep expanding and keep experiencing new levels of abundance and clarity and all the good things.
Yes. Yes. And as you're talking, I keep thinking about, it's interesting because this isn't something like I don't think that you and I would tend to talk about uh, in a situation like this. And yet here we are, and it keeps coming up for me. So I'm going to talk about it. One of the groups that I'm a part of and that I help lead, when we hit 2021, we talk about our intentions, we talk about our word for the year, we talked about kind of going into this new year. It's pretty natural to talk about that stuff. And one of the things we talked about was what we were no longer going to tolerate. And that can be like a double edged sword, right? Because by giving it attention, by saying, I'm not going to tolerate this, it's kind of like an invitation for it to show up so that you can choose to not tolerate it. So a lot of people in the group made their declarations of the things that they were no longer going to tolerate. And then, of course, those things showed up. And so the next month, we talked about, okay, great. You said you were no longer going to tolerate this. And it was so interesting because most people didn't say, I'm not going to tolerate long lines at the grocery store, right? They said, I'm not going to tolerate procrastination in myself, or I'm not going to tolerate um, putting myself last. I'm not going to tolerate other people taking my time in a way, right? It was all more like internal stuff that they said that they weren't going to tolerate. And so, right, then of course, what showed up for them? Opportunities to show up differently. So the next week we talked about um, what are we going to replace that, right? Our that other habit, our conditioned response. What are we going to replace that with? And why I'm talking about that right now, Rachel, is because I feel like that's what happens when we're here and then we go here. It's yawning, sorry. It's that same thing for me. It's a moment of recognition of, oh, what new story am I going to tell? Or how can I, yeah, it's just another way to look at it, I think. But I did want to say this. So that has come up for me in things that I didn't know that I was tolerating. So I think maybe as I'm talking about this, I think maybe it was like this slow giving the benefit of the doubt, okay, I don't even remember what you're talking about now, but I promise I'm going to get to something, because what happened for me yesterday is I was living maybe in a little bit out of alignment, but with really good reason. My reason was giving grace to other people. My reason was having a huge amount of compassion. My reason was, so one of the things that I do not tolerate is tardiness. One of the, and I coach high school kids, and I also don't tolerate excuses. And I also, like, in a normal year, and I keep going to say this, normal year, right? Normal circumstances, I just have no patience or tolerance for those things. I set expectations up from the gun, and people rise to my level of expectation. And what happened is I kept making exceptions, or, like I said, extending compassion or grace for people's excuses for these extraordinary circumstances, for these COVID times that we are living in, and recognizing there are certain things that are unenforceable right now, right? So I actually have some limitations placed on me as a coach around when people miss a certain amount of practice. Like, if they say they have a sore throat, they can't come, right? We're like, it's COVID time. We got screenings, we got temperature guns, we got the whole thing. Anyways, what I'm saying is I got to this place of like, oh, it was a slow build of I'm tolerating things that I don't like to tolerate. And I'm saying that I'm extending grace. I'm saying that I'm extending compassion, but I'm really just building resentment. And yesterday that came to a head, and it's happened a few times in my life where it comes to a head in a way that I think, am I being too hard? Am I being too mean? Am I being too whatever? But really, I'm just finally speaking my truth. I'm finally saying there is absolutely no excuse for chronic tardiness. And there is absolute, right? Like, boom, boom, boom. I speak my truth. And my fears around doing that, around coming across as too mean or whatever my fears are, it just feels so better. I guess I don't care about my fears. But what tends to happen is people are like, thank you for saying that. Thank you for doing that. And that is exactly what happened for me. So why I went to the tolerating thing, I don't know, Rachel, but it just kept coming up when you were talking. So do you know why I went there?
Yeah, no, I love that because it's like you're selling off your truth bit by bit when you don't honor that initially. And I can say, I think in all the cases that happened to me last week, that's what I was doing as well. Um, and what I mean, like when I opened this conversation with like leaning into life, really immersing ourselves in it, finding the joy, appreciating, like getting to that place of really living in it and in our full truth, that can't happen if we're selling ourselves out, if we're pretending things are okay, if we're extending too much um, forgiveness, like, you know what I mean? And what you're talking about, it's just you being you and expressing what you feel in a nice way, like, right? Just matter of fact, this is my truth. And letting the other people around you determine if they want to be a part of that or not, right? And I see this a lot in business as well. We start off in a way where we're considering what everybody else is thinking way more than what we're thinking. And so we tend to start in that place of like, they know best. This is what they want to pay. This is what they want to learn. This is what they want from me. And that's often why people don't really get started in such a great way, right? Because there's not enough of you in it. You're not engaged enough. You're not present enough. You're not excited enough. Um, but over the years, we get to not being able to tolerate that anymore because it gets infuriating and very full of resentment. So, yeah, I love that so much. Your truth is your truth for a reason, and you're going to feel best. You're not going to feel very good at all if you don't follow that. And if you don't follow that long enough, you're going to find yourself in situations like us where you're realizing, like, oh, I thought I was being nice, but really, I wasn't helping anybody. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? With this particular client, I recognize I'm having this full circle moment right
Hmm.
now. I totally recognize she is someone, she is so sweet and so grandmotherly. And so, but I recognize I hold back. Oh, I'm having such an epiphany right now because there's an athlete on my team that I'm experiencing the same thing with. Like when people are like really quiet and kind of people pleasers and holding and they're holder backers, they take me longer to like really understand because I feel like I need to be gentler with them.
Hmm.
Like I feel like they might break, right? And what I'm recognizing is not fair to them, right? Not good for me because then I'm like I'm just being I'm saying this like people are gonna be like, I don't ever want to coach with Carrie. She sounds mean. But I feel like I'm being a little too nice. I was being a little too nice with this client, a little too encouraging. And same with this athlete on my team that I'm thinking of right now. Like she's way better than she's running. And it's the same thing. Like I've just been extending a little too much grace because I don't want to be mean. When the truth is, she's not paying me to be mean. She's paying me to be honest. She's paying me, both of them, right? They're paying, well, the runner doesn't pay me. But regardless, like they're showing up for me because they want me to tell them the truth, because they want to get better, because they want, and just because their personality makes me feel a little bit like I have to be more careful. It actually causes a little bit more discomfort inside of me. And if I'm feeling that, I'm not living my truth. And if I'm not living my truth, I'm not showing up the way that they need me to show up. And so thanks for the epiphany, because I didn't recognize it with that client until you just said now, like, oh, I was actually probably treating her in a way that I perceived as kind and loving and encouraging. But if I think about it, really, it was maybe a little bit, only word I can think of is belittling, but that's not diminishing, right? Like I really needed to raise my expectations of her, not like lower them or placate or do anything. Like she deserves this standard just as much as anybody else. There we go.
Love it. Wow, guys, we just went on a big journey. I hope you saw a bit of yourself in there and can now reclaim some of your truths, because, sometimes it's hard to share our truth because we feel like it's going to be disruptive. I know for me in the past, that's when I've not wanted to talk about what was going on for me with friends, clients, loved ones, because I thought maybe it's too disruptive. Maybe what I really want to do with my business is too weird. Maybe how I really want to live and my partner isn't going to agree with. And, for years, I would put off the conversations or the changes that I really wanted to make. But hands down, every single time I've done it, gone ahead with it, even if I'm like sweating bullets or something, because I'm so nervous about it. You guys, it's just easier to do it quickly, because the only thing that's really going to go wrong is you not doing it. Every single time I've ever had that conversation that I needed to have, it went okay. It went okay. And like maybe the one or two times it didn't was like with, partners breaking up or something. And you know what? The one that really mattered, we got back together and it made everything better. So, as a person who maybe gets looked up to quite often for like living my truth and expressing myself freely, I go through the ringer as well. It's not always an easy thing to like think that you're going to like assert this new level of yourself onto the world, but the truth is that the people around you can feel you. They feel your truth. They're not going to be very surprised about what you want to do. And oftentimes the people around you are just way ahead of you. Like they know where you're going, who you are. And so just remember that. Like you don't have to be so afraid of being yourself. It's okay. You can do it. It's why you're here. You'll feel so much better once you do. And I think maybe that's the moral of the story for this week. Maybe you can avoid some of these pitfalls if you just stay closer to you. But the pitfalls are not a big deal. They help you grow. They help you gain confidence and refocus. So, yeah, nothing went wrong here.
No, and everything is an opportunity. At least for me, I look at everything that happens as an opportunity for me to answer the question, who do I want to be in this? Mm-hmm. Right? Who do I want to be in this? And as I when we start to like do the thing we're doing, swallowing little pieces of ourselves, telling it, right? Eventually we get to the thing, right? Who do I want to be in this? Dude, I don't want to be like full on me. I want to live in my truth. I want to live in my values. I want to, and I'm totally okay. I am totally okay with whatever the consequences of that. It's so worth it to be at home in yourself, at home in your life. Like, so worth it than to live the alternative. The alternative of, I keep coming back to, I don't remember what conversation we had, Rachel, but when I was saying, I struggled with appropriateness, right? Like, oh my gosh, this like living with freedom is so much better than living appropriately.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I feel complete.
I do too.
Therapy session
Um,
complete.
yeah. So if you want to join us on the journey, if they want to join us on the journey, Rachel, where do they go?
Well, Carrie and I have a group that we lead called the Multidimensional Abundance Coaching Group. And we view abundance in all of these ways, right? It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's financial, and all the other things that you want in your life. They can all be in a really great place. So if you're interested in learning more about that, then go to intuitiveart.com/membership and you can read all about it. All right. Well, lots of love, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.